Hello.
Hello?
Hi. Would you mind turning on your camera?
Hi. Yes, let me figure out how to do that. I'm driving home. I'm almost to my house. So pardon me. Okay, can you
Oh,
hear
you're
me now?
fine.
Hello.
Hi.
You asked what one of the skills you need to be in my field. It's multitasking.
I'm currently doing that too. I just literally finished practice and then I'm doing this and then I'm going to another
Yes,
practice after this.
yes, I remember those days. Well, nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Thank you so much for doing
Yeah.
this.
You're so welcome. And once I park, I'll actually hold this so that it won't be so janky when I'm looking at you.
You're
Yeah,
fine.
but ask me anything and everything you have. I'm happy to
Okay,
answer.
so I have 10 questions and
Yeah,
you
I looked over them
yeah,
briefly
like
earlier.
in the past, like I gave you like a little introduction, but usually we would
Yeah,
shadow them like in the office. So
yeah,
here it's different just because of circumstance, but
I know.
get to learn. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that is good. Well, and hopefully, because what year are you in school?
I'm a senior.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, well, maybe if you're, if you do end up wanting to pursue something like this in the future when things are kind of back to normal, we've even had college students who have come and shadowed and things like that. So if you ever were interested, you definitely could.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, ask away.
So my first question is, where did you attend college and what is your degree in?
So I went to a fairly small liberal arts school in Missouri called St. Louis University. So it's in St. Louis, Missouri. And I did a little bit of an unorthodox major. I was a piano performance major in college.
Oh
So
wow.
I'd grown up with music and playing piano, and I knew I wanted to pursue dentistry. But you have to take a lot of prerequisites like in the sciences um, to like apply and to get into school, but you don't necessarily have to major in biology or chemistry, things like that. A lot of people do, but you don't have to. And so I wanted to do music and then also pre-dentistry. So I just did both, and it was awesome. I loved it. It was a great thing. I kind of had my outlet when I was stressed and could go and play and just kind of do my thing that I loved. So it was, yeah, that was my major. It's a little different than most, but
Yeah, that's definitely
it was fun.
the most unique thing I've heard so far.
Yeah, yeah,
Out
that
of all
probably
the
so.
things.
Probably so. But yeah, you can major in anything. You just have to take all of the prerequisites. And so I had to do a lot of, I had to take a lot of classes like in the summer, a lot of classes like over winter sessions and things like that to graduate in the 4 year time frame. And it basically worked out where I almost minored in probably biology and chemistry because you take so many of those classes. But yeah, you can be as creative as you want to be. It worked out well for me. So
So, did you have to go to graduate school? I'm assuming you did.
you do. So what I did, so you do 4 years of college, 4 years of dental school, and then to specialize like in orthodontics or pediatric dentistry or oral surgery, any of the specialties of dentistry, you then do like a residency or like a postgraduate program. And so mine was a 3 year program. So it was like 4 years of college, 4 years of dental, and then 3 years of orthodontic training after that. Um, and so I did those in different places, but yeah. And some programs for orthodontics are 2 years, some were 2.5. I ended up getting a master's, and the 3 year programs, the longer ones, you usually get a master's as well. So that was kind of just a bonus to kind of do that on top of it. But yeah, it's a long road, but it is worth it, like well worth it.
So, why is it like, I know this question wasn't on there, but why is it that
Yeah.
some programs are only like 2 years while others are like 3?
Yeah. So the 2 year programs that I looked at were just clinical programs. Like you didn't also have a master's degree once you finished. And so they were heavier. They didn't have as many, you didn't have as much coursework. You didn't have to do a thesis, all of that. You just focused on the clinical part of it. And so they were able to shorten it because of that. And I know of a program that I applied to that was 2.5 years where you also got a master's. So it kind of just depends on how condensed they want to have it. A benefit of having a longer one like I was is that in orthodontics, I mean, you had braces, so like it happens over years. Like most cases are, say, average is 2 years. And so you want to try to see as many and treat as many cases while you're in school as you can from start to finish. And so those shorter programs, you kind of run the risk that you aren't going to really going to get to start and finish many of your own cases. And so I thought it was a benefit also to kind of be in a longer program, because you're getting more practice, more skills building, all that. And so, but there's a huge range for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how did you find out about this job, and like what made you interested in pursuing?
Yeah. I grew up with a family of dentists. So my grandfather was a dentist. I have two uncles that were dentists. They both are retired now. Two aunts that are dental hygienists. So I grew up just around it. My mom actually was the office manager for one of my uncles who's a dentist growing up. And so I just kind of grew up in that office, and really liked a lot about it. Like it's very artistic in a way. Dentistry is like you're working with your hands, and you're building things and kind of sculpting things, and like it's very intricate. Like if you like working with your hands and kind of visualizing things, you have to have kind of a ability to visualize things and then kind of put it into practice. And so I liked that you're with people a lot, like you're talking, you're kind of up and down. You're not set in one like desk all day and kind of like doing one task. Like it's varied all day long. So I liked that about it. Majority of dentists work 4 days a week, which I've loved the idea of, and you make a good living. It's very family oriented in a way, if you want to be a mom or have a family. And so just there's a lot of benefits to it. So it was something I knew I probably wanted to pursue when I was really little, and just kind of shadowed my uncles and kind of saw there are things about it that some people don't like. I mean, if you don't like working in people's mouths or don't like blood or things like that, then it's probably not going to be for you. But you kind of get used to those things. It doesn't bother you after a while.
So what does the starting salary look like for this profession?
You asked that question. It's so variable based on probably where you go into practice and what type of practice you go into. I would say probably 100,000, maybe, kind of depending on the area. There are probably areas where it's more, like if you were in a really big city where like New York City, San Francisco, things like that, they're probably higher salaries because it's such a higher cost of living. Some people go out and they start their own practice day one. And so you may not make anything, in the beginning because you have so much debt. But, and then there are some that there are more and more like corporate dental practices where it's like a big corporate entity and they hire you to go in. And so then you have a very set salary. But it's so over the board that it's hard for me to even say.
That's okay.
For sure.
So how we talked about time management and multitasking, how do you manage your time outside of work?
I have a lot of support from my husband. So I have two little kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. And my husband stays home with our kids. So that's a huge help to me. He does everything during the day and helps me. But you're working constantly. I try to do as much as I can during the day with my patients and like correspond. You have to send a lot of letters and kind of follow up with other doctors and things like that. And so that you have to be very organized in your time management. And I am a list person. Like I'm very much, my staff laughs at me because I always have a thing of Post-its by me, and I'm constantly making lists because I'm always worried I'm going to forget something, because you're kind of hopping. I don't know if you remember when you were in treatment, like the doctor would kind of sit down with you, but then they would get up and they might go to another chair over here and kind of come back to you or things like that. And so I might say something or say, okay, I need to send this letter. Well, I'm going to go write it down so I don't forget, because I might move on to something else and then not think about that again for 3 days if I don't write it down. So I'm a big list person, and making sure I get my list for that day marked off before I leave for the day. And then really kind of delegating things that I can. So like we have a treatment coordinator in each office who is the person who helps us when we see new patients and like takes our notes for us and things like that. And they're good about also helping us with kind of the behind the scenes things that they can. And so it's really kind of working good with a team and like being decisive in what you have to do and what your team can do to help you. But being organized and and multitasking well are probably my biggest strengths that have helped me the most. I think it's all, yeah, that's why I am able to kind of not have a heart attack by this age. It is a lot of, it's stressful at times, but I think if you get in the kind of the groove of it, and you kind of build a muscle for seeing patients and like being able to do multiple things at once and like keep it all straight. And that's why they call it practice. Like, if you ever heard somebody call like a dental practice, you're still learning. I mean, like, I'm still learning at this point. I mean, there are times, and that's why I like working kind of in a group practice like I do with Dr. Bartlett and Dr. Mitchell, because they have their strengths, they have their experiences, they're older than me. And I mean, we're always learning from each other. So, I mean, that's a huge thing.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I feel like you kind of have to figure out like your own rhythm and like style of
You do.
work.
You do. You really do. And some people do it completely different than me. So, I mean, there's no one way, but yeah, you just kind of have to find your rhythm. That's exactly right.
What would you find is like the most challenging about your job?
That's a good question. I think some of it, I'm the perfectionist. So I think the hardest thing for me is probably beating myself up if something doesn't go how I wanted it to. So like, you're working in a human body. So like, there are things that we do that are very predictable that, but in certain individuals, it may not work out well. So like, we have, like, when adult teeth are coming in, if they are heading in the wrong direction or they're something like that, they can damage other teeth. And so we try to do certain things like have baby teeth removed or things like that to try to avoid surgeries for patients, or avoid people having to have teeth pulled or things like that. And sometimes, even if your best effort of doing things, the body doesn't respond how you want it to. And so those are the things that I get disappointed in myself about. But I don't know, you can't do everything. You can't make everything work the way you want it to, unfortunately. And so that's probably the hardest thing for me, is not second guessing or like beating myself up if something doesn't go how I want it to go. And sometimes there are just outcomes that you can't predict, and you kind of have to just know your science and know that you are doing everything you can, and maybe that the outcome, you can work with what you have in a way. Some of it also is working, every different person that we work with has a different kind of, the way that they take in the information you give them is different. So like, one of the struggles I have, and like I'm having to learn and kind of grow in, is I can tell somebody something or like a plan, but sometimes they don't understand what I'm saying. Like, I have to know how they're taking in information and how they can really take in the plan that I have for them. Because if I have something in my head that I hear what they are wanting, but it's different than what they are really meaning, then we're going to be heading in the wrong direction. Our goal is not going to be met. So I have really gotten into recently, like, planning cases out digitally, where like, we'll take a digital scan of the person's teeth, and then we can have a model made on the computer, and I can do the plan digitally and then actually show it to the patient before we've ever even started the treatment. So then it's like they can visually see what I was planning and what I was meaning in our discussion. And then I can know that we're on the same page. So that's a big one, that can be difficult, is like just knowing that your communication is clear, and that we work with so many different people, and everybody's so unique and different. It's like, you kind of have to just make sure you're on the same page with people. And that can be harder with some people than others, I would say.
Yeah. No, like sometimes like they would explain something, and we're like, can you explain that another way?
Right.
Because that just didn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you go to school, like we went to school for 11 years or whatever to learn all of this terminology, all of these things. And then that's what and then you get out and you go into practice, and you kind of have to change the way that you speak so that your patients understand you as well. And so, yeah, it is, you kind of have to be flipping your brain back and forth a lot. It can be a little bit of a struggle at times, but yeah, that's probably one of the harder things for me, is just making sure I'm communicating with people so that they understand exactly what my plan is, so that we're on the same page, and then not dwelling in things that don't go perfectly. That's a hard one for me, but
So now on a happier note, what would you say what's the most rewarding thing about your job?
I find the most rewarding thing, sorry if that was really dark, I just turned the light on, to be, I love the day braces come off for patients and like the reveal. I love that. I think it is so fun.
I remember when I
And
got mine off.
yeah, it's the best day ever. And then I especially love it in those patients who had really, like, maybe their self-esteem was low, or like an adult patient who has had a lot of like difficulty with, say, like pain or discomfort, or like their teeth are really broken down because of their bite, and then we like have changed that for them. That transformation is probably my favorite thing of all.
Yeah, I remember like even like my whole like face shapes changed like when I got my braces off and everything. I was so excited. It froze.
Can you?
I heard you there for a second.
Hey, you froze. What'd you say?
I said I remember like the day I
Now I
got
can
my
hear you.
braces off and like how different like I looked like to myself because I was so
Uh-huh.
my mouth was super narrow and my
It
canine was
is.
super
Yeah.
high. And I was like, oh my God, I look so different.
Yes. You have a beautiful smile.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
I
it's a
wear my
huge
retainers
change.
religiously.
Yeah. It's so, that is good. That's good. That's exactly what you should do. Yeah. But there's a lot of fun stuff about what we do. Like, I like that people, it's a visual change that people can appreciate, you know, like they see it, and that's fun. Like, that's really fun.
So, what would you say are some essential, like basic skills? They can be like personality traits that are necessary
Yeah.
if you want to work in this line of profession.
I said organized. I would say you need to be a good communicator, direct in your,
Oh, it froze.
and kind of being the head of a team. So you need to be clear in your communication, good
No, come back.
eye. Like, you need to have ability to like look at things, assess them, and visually decide changes you need to make. It is a very visual field, and kind of that art. And then also like kind of understanding of
No.
in your mind ahead of time. Look it in a way. So you're kind of like looking at where you are that day, and then also kind of planning out what you're going to do in advance. So kind of having that ability to think a couple steps ahead is really good. Yeah, lots of things, but those are probably the top ones for me.
And would you find it like, I don't know if there's like a difficulty, like difference between working with like teenagers, like slash young adults to like
Mm-hmm.
mature adults? Would you say that there's like a difficulty?
Huh. It all depends on the person. I find that I have a lot of my teenage, I think they're all difficult in different ways. So like young children that we work with, I think what we run into is a lot of times they're kind of nervous and scared because they've never been to an orthodontist before, never had anything done that kind of is sore or can make things painful. So that can be difficult, just kind of gaining their trust and like allowing them to do what you need to do. Teenagers, my big one thing is they tend to not listen to your instructions on rubber bands or brushing their teeth. So they'll do what you say to a degree, but they won't follow through with it for a long period of time. And so that's kind of motivating them is the hard thing. So that can be tough. And then adult patients' difficulty is a lot of them they're much more sensitive to changes that you make because they've lived with their bite kind of in their teeth in their way that they have for decades. And so some of that is like doing things in such a way where they're comfortable and they can kind of, you do their changes a little bit slower in a way sometimes because their teeth may not respond the same way, but also so that they can kind of get used to the changes you're making. So they all have difficulties. They all have pluses too. I mean, like I love to work with really all ages, but yeah, there are hard things about all of them, I would say.
I remember when I got rubber bands, I was like, I'm wearing these as
Mhm.
much as I can because I want my braces off as soon
Yep.
as possible. I was like,
Yep.
I don't want any like lines on my teeth when I get my brackets off. I want them to
Yes.
look
Oh my
nice.
gosh, yes. I know that's probably my biggest pet peeve is when people don't brush well and then they have like white spots from when the braces are taken off. It's such a bummer because their teeth are so beautiful, like they're
Yeah.
straight, but they don't look as good. So that's a big one for me that I hate to see. But I don't know, even sometimes you make your best effort and people still don't do what they're supposed to do, you know, and that can be a hard thing. You kind of have to just, I don't know, you figure it out, but yeah.
So my last question is, what are some things they have to be careful about while working with a patient?
Yeah, so um lots of things. So a big one for me is comfort, like the patient's comfort. So you do have to be good at kind of sensing, a lot of times it's like nonverbal cues from a patient. It's like if you're working on them and there's something you're doing and you can tell they're tense or like they're, you know, you get that vibe kind of like if you have kind of a good, another thing when you said like something good is like if empathetic, like kind of gauging like someone's response without them having to tell you is a big strength. Because you'll be working with someone and they obviously you're working in their mouth, so they can't talk to you readily. But if you can tell that they're uncomfortable, then you can change what you're doing. I like to ask people a lot of questions, like when I'm working, like, okay, are you doing okay? Is anything bothering you? Even if they can just nod yes or no. That is something I try to be really careful about. And then I mean, obviously with COVID, we have to be very careful about we always are with infection control and like making sure we're keeping everything as clean and kind of controlled as possible with that. But that's been we're even doing even more measures now, kind of protecting ourselves and our staff, but our patients. I'm trying to think what else. Ask me the question again.
I said,
I think I
what are
forgot.
some things you have to be careful about while working with a patient?
Yeah, we work with a lot of instruments. So like we have patients wear like glasses a lot now because we do like worry about like dropping things or like if something were to splash up, like when we rinse and we have like cleaning agents that we're using on the teeth or things like that. You do worry also about like you don't want to hurt someone's eyes or hurt their teeth, or you have to be very careful when when you had your glue polished off of your teeth, you have to be very careful when you're doing that, to make sure you're not harming the enamel or harming the cheeks or anything like that. So you'd have to be careful when you're doing that. And that's a hard thing, is like you're trying to be very cautious and like thinking about all the steps you need to take, but then also at the same time you need to be talking and like
Yeah.
engaging and things. So you have to be like really using all these different parts of your brain at once, down for a short amount of time and then popping over to somebody else too. So
Yeah.
it's a challenge. It's a challenge for sure.
Well, those were all my questions. So thank you so much for answering all of them. I
You're
feel like I
welcome.
learned
You're so
a lot.
welcome. Well,
Well,
good. If you think of other ones and you need to ask me, just let me know. I'm happy. You can email me at any time.
I have an evaluation form that I will email you that you have to fill out. It's super short and it'll take you less than like 5 minutes to do. Ah,
Sure. Yeah. I will get back to you.
okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.